technically not even driving, but I am sitting in my car, and I thought that this would be a good video to do. Many of you are well aware of the reality that I am a strident and ardent critic of modern policing in the United States. I believe that law enforcement in the United States has proven themselves time and again to be deserving of harsh criticism for any number of reasons. And you don't have to agree with me on that. I know that the conservative trope, the patriotic trope, is that we are to be back to blue at all costs. And when we see an officer in public, we're supposed to thank them for being a hero. And I can understand where that comes from. Even though I adamantly disagree with the mentality behind it. But as much as I critiqued the Uvalde school massacre response by the Uvalde school police, and especially their chief, I also, and stand by that critique. That's proven they were cowards. The chief was a coward. His officers were all cowards. I don't care what people like Brendan Tatum say. Brendan Tatum is a sycophant and a bully and a blowhard. And what his critique of what happened in Uvalde was that anybody who critiqued what happened in Uvalde and said that the men were cowards, that they're all cowards and not worthy to, even share a room in some cases with the men who failed to step in and help in Uvalde. I want to juxtapose what happened in Uvalde with what happened in Nashville at Covenant Presbyterian School yesterday. And I want to talk briefly about radicalization. You see, our society is being radicalized. And many of you are too dense to understand that you're being pitted against people that you should be allying yourself with. There are people, and there's one here in Minnesota in particular. Some of you are familiar with him. His name's Stu Peters. Stewie likes to rant and rave about the wickedness and evil that is LGBTQ+. And I definitely have a problem with their agenda. I do. I have a problem with their agenda. But in his mind, in many of his followers' minds, that's the only evil in the world, and that's all we should talk about. And if you're not talking about that, then you're talking about how wonderful Donald Trump is, and how we have to bow down and kowtow to the greatness that is the Trumpster, and so that's a radicalization in the aspect of how much these people hate that particular. They hate that group of people. They hate them. They hate them. They'll say things like, well, I don't hate the person. I hate their sin, right? They'll say those things, but they hate them. And they gleefully rub their hands together whenever something bad happens because of the actions of one of the people in that community. And then they'll attack anyone who points out that Donald Trump's not the great white hope of the United States, and they glom on to this idea that Trump is everything. And then you have the other side, And this other side is radicalized too. They've been convinced that there's this great genocide happening to them. And so many of us, and I have massive critiques for leftism. I have massive critiques for leftists. I have massive critiques for progressivism. But I don't see them as the enemy that a lot of people do. I believe the ideology is dangerous. I believe it will lead us down a road that, if it's not destruction, it's going to be downfall. But it's too late for us to sit back and go, oh, well, we could stop them, because in the grand scheme of things, they're not the enemy. See, the enemy are the powers that be. The enemies are the people you vote for. So many of you are so locked into this ideology and this mindset of, oh, I have to vote for Republicans because Republicans are going to save us. And I have to vote for the right Republicans. I have to vote for a Trump Republican, or I have to vote for a non-Trump Republican, and a never Trumper, or I have to vote for a Democrat because the Democrats care and they're going to make things equitable. And the problem is you're all buying into it. You buy into the race hatred. If you're white, you have to hate blacks. If you're black, you have to hate whites. If you're black, you have to blame whites for every problem that you have. And if you're white, you have to say that blacks are not redeemable. And you'll say things like, well, I don't believe that, but your mindset goes there. You go there because you look immediately for who to blame on both sides. Now, admittedly, and this does tie into Nashville, and admittedly, hours before, after the news broke about what was happening in Nashville, but a couple of hours, maybe 2-3 hours before who the shooter was, before that broke, I said, here's what's going to happen. It's either going to be a radicalized white male, and they're going to paint it that way, or it's going to be a radicalized member of the ABC community, and they're going to blame the church. Now, that's not me looking for blame, because I know what they're going to use to create the divide, to further the gap, to widen the gap between we the people. They want us at each other's throats. They wanted everybody, first and foremost, the first thing that the media wanted was they wanted to report it as a radicalized white person with access to firearms so that we could further the agenda for firearms control. That's what they wanted. Then, when the story broke, they wanted everybody to jump out, and there are realities too we have to address when it comes to the mental health aspects. Oh, look, it wasn't a white right-winger who did this. It was a whacked out leftist who did this. I don't care what radicalized this person. They were radicalized. They were radicalized. That end of story. But we have to walk very carefully to make sure that we aren't buying into the radicalization argument and taking up sides. What happened in Nashville, Tennessee yesterday was the act of a wicked, horrible, evil person. And it wouldn't have mattered if that person was trans or straight, gay or lesbian, white or black, Asian or Hispanic. It was evil. And it wasn't more evil because it was a trans person. It wasn't more evil because it was a girl who identifies as a man. That didn't make it more evil. But you know what I hear? What I hear, and there again, there are critiques that should be offered. We have Lee Fink here in the state of Minnesota pushing a radical trans agenda in the House of Representatives. Radical. Talking about needing a sanctuary. And I asked, Lee, what about a sanctuary for 9-year-olds. But it's not a more evil act because it was done by a person who identifies as trans. It doesn't make it more evil. It literally doesn't. But that's how everybody's acting, that it's more evil because of that. Do I want this person to rot in hell? Yes, I do. I want her to rot, or him, or I don't know. Was it a him? That I don't. I want this person to rot in hell. I do. I absolutely, because that's what they deserve. Absolutely deserve it. Now, the reality is, as even in the way that I critique modern policing in the United States today, the two officers in particular, and the body cam footage is out there, two of those officers in particular were heroes. They were the ones who responded were heroes. They literally did go and put themselves in the line of fire to end that tragedy and to stop it from being even more tragic. They put their lives on the line, put themselves in the way of gunfire to stop more children and other adults in that building from being gunned down by an evil, wicked monster of a human being. They're heroes. And I would buy them all a coffee or lunch or a drink. I would do it. They're heroes. And I will tell them that if I ever get the chance to meet them. I will flat out tell them they're heroes. They are actually the definition of heroes. They put their lives on the line in a situation where they knew they could be killed. They're heroes. That's coming from me. These were public servants who were behaving like genuine public servants. They put their own safety, their own security, they put going home at the end of the night to their families, they put that on the back burner to save the lives of other people. That's heroic. That is a hero. And they didn't go in there going, well, if it's a black person, I can't do anything. Or if it's a white person, I can't do anything. Or if it's a trans person, I can't do anything. Or if it's a Hispanic person, I have to do this. They went in there. They didn't give a damn about the gender, about identification. They didn't give a damn about ethnicity. What they knew was there was a threat. And they went in there against that threat, not knowing how many threats were there, and they did what they were supposed to do, and they did it in the face of great and daunting danger to their own lives. They're heroes. So don't you ever have the balls to tell me that I'm radical, that I don't respect law enforcement anymore. Don't you ever tell anybody that. I respect cops that do their jobs. I respect cops that step up and do the heroic thing when it needs to be done. And that's what they did in Nashville yesterday. And I wish there were more like them. We need more like them. We need more like them to step up and do their jobs the way they're supposed to be done. And my fervent prayer is that in the midst of this horrible situation, that those men are able to sleep and recover from the tragedy that they had to intervene in yesterday. That, my friends, is what I hope. So credit to where credit is due. Credit to the men who put themselves in the line of fire to save lives. Because that's something that many of you will never have to do. Most of us will never have to do that. Most of us will never have to risk our own safety for the safety of others. And they did it. They did it. Even though the courts have ruled over and over and over again that law enforcement and our officers are not obligated to risk personal safety for the safety of others, those men yesterday, and I believe the count was 5 of them in particular, did just that. They arrived on scene, they assembled, and they went in and they neutralized the evil. And yes, there's an argument to be made at some point down the road about what caused it and why, and what are we going to do about it. And yes, there's a reality to critique the radicalization, but before we get really bent out of shape about radicalization before we get really bent out of shape about who's radicalized and who's not, make sure you're not buying into the radicalization that's happening, that they're using to keep us at each other's throats. If your response to anybody you disagree with is, oh, you're a racist or you're a leftist libtard, you're probably one of the radicalized, playing the game that they want you to play. So one more time, credit to where credit is due. Those cops that ended that threat, that evil and malicious threat, they're heroes. I wish they could have gotten there sooner. Yeah, I wish there would have been somebody in that school that could have ended that threat before anybody died. But it is what it is. And I want to thank those men for doing what they did. But we had better make sure that we're not saying it's worse. If we're conservative or maybe libertarian-minded, we better not be saying that it's worse because of who did it. It's evil. Evil knows no bounds. Right-wingers are capable of doing that kind of evil. Left-wingers are capable of doing that kind of evil. Centrists are capable of doing that kind of evil. But if your argument is it's worse because of who did it and their motivation makes it worse, then you do not understand the wickedness of your own heart and how easy it would be for you to be swayed to do the same thing. Not all of you, but if your only argument is it's only evil because of who did it, then you're missing the reality of your own nature. That's a fact. Once more, those men in Nashville were heroes. And I will stand on that.